In three, two, one. Hello, hello again, people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are watching this in the world. I am the one, the only Malik Miles, Mr. Main Event, Mr. Malik Mania, and my co-host.
The one with one name, it's me. We're back. It's Edon, and we're coming back at you with some more news and a little bit of a preview of the next UFC event.
Yes, and if you don't already know, this is our show. Conflict Management is a combat sports MMA slash show podcast. We talk about our thoughts and opinions on news going on in the MMA world, MMA community. So yeah, enjoy. So first thing on the docket is the Sean O'Malley is announcing that Marab is going to be his opponent for his next opponent. What do you think of that? I think because I have my own thoughts on it, but I'm curious
Mm.
to hear what you think.
Yeah, so I think this is the one that we were all anticipating. I mean, Sean kind of fumbled a little bit trying to call out Taporia for 145 when that fight wasn't realistically going to happen. So he kind of fumbled a little bit not having the stare down with Marab in the cage that night after he defended his title. But this is ultimately the fight that everybody thought was going to happen, that seemed like before the event was for sure going to happen, and now it's here. I think it's also a sneaky good move for Sean to be announcing it like he's the one who's putting on the event when it's realistically the UFC has set this up, they've played the storyline. They had Marab there in the front row. This was all already going to happen anyway, but it's a nice little move for Sean to announce it like it's the Sugar State Athletic Commission is putting this event on.
Yeah. Side note. Sorry for I just realized this. Sorry for the low energy anyone watching this low energy intro. I think it might just be my posture. I just thought about it just now. But you know, who cares? We out here. We're gonna keep it rolling, keep it pushing. But I agree with you. I think it was an interesting call it to make it like, oh, I'm the one putting on the fight. I'm the one calling out Marab. But I do think the call out of Ilya Taporia I feel like was too soon because it's what is this only one title defense,
Yeah, that was his first one.
and while it was a very good title defense against Chito Vera, I think that calling out the champion in the next weight class up I feel like was a bit too soon. I feel like I don't knock him for chasing greatness. I'm all here for it. Uh, Anytime a fighter is out here, any person chasing greatness, I'm here for it. I'm like, oh, that's great, that's awesome. However, I think that so I'll never knock someone chasing that double champ status. But what I will say is that my personal opinion is I think you should defend your title at least 3 times, 2 to 3 times, 3 times
Well,
ideally to
I think
be.
that it's kind of like a situational thing. So like if on the way up you've cleared everybody out
Mhm.
and nobody's really excited by any matchups that you have in your division, I'm kind of okay with like one defense and go up, especially if the champ above you has also done similar. But
Mhm.
two guys who just kind of got into the championship seat, it's there's no reason for them to to be looking outside of their division.
And it holds up the divisions. It holds because if that fight would have happened, while I definitely would have watched Ilya Taporia versus Sean O'Malley fight,
Mhm.
I think it would have definitely held up the divisions.
Yeah.
Like, because if I'm not mistaken, it's Sean O'Malley's and then Ilya Taporia's division is above him, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure. That's what I said, but just double check because uh, I don't know why I thought it was the under, but yes, I do agree. I think it's a fight I would watch, but I think it's too soon for that to happen because if you are someone who has cleared out the division prior to, like you were going up and just knocking out all the best people, but even I won't be against it, but I still do think, hey, get you like three title defenses, maybe two. There are some special cases, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
where I feel like someone could move up, but I think yeah, give it two, three title defenses, and then be like, okay, I'm gonna move up, just so you can show that like yes, you are the champion of this division. I mean, they are the champion, but like you're actually defending your belt, and then now you're moving up to go after the next one. This one, but I feel that Marab is going to. While I do like O'Malley, I think Marab is gonna win. Like definitely, I think as I just as a fellow wrestler, I try to go for other, my fellow wrestlers and whatnot. But Marab, the pace is insane. I think that the pace that he fights at or runs at, where he's just nonstop takedowns, unrelenting pressure, unrelenting pace. He's in your face. He's going for the takedowns. Like I thought the Cejudo fight would have been a harder fight for him, but he really like low key kind of like stunned it on like Cejudo, where like you having like the Senior Cejudo, double champ, Olympic champ in wrestling, against the new guy who's also an amazing wrestler. I thought it was gonna be a really a harder match for him, but he really did was like, nah, I'm the best wrestler at in this division,
Hmm.
and kind of like, look, as much as I like Cejudo, I think that like he just being like, hey, I'm the best wrestler, and that's pretty much what he's done to pretty much everybody. It kind of also, I think his style of wrestling. I know sometimes fans don't like the find this like the fighters who have a wrestling style kind of like a bit boring because it's just like the some people do the whole laying prayer thing, but I think his style of wrestling makes it fascinating to watch for fans because it's just boom, I'm taking you down. I'm gonna get a couple shots in. Oh, you get back up. Boom, I'm taking you down and give it another double, blast double. He's picking dudes up, and we're going to the other side of the ring with them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And while Shuttle Melly does have good striking, really good striking, because oh man, he's a sniper essentially. Because he's just boom in and out, but just I don't know how he's gonna deal with the wrestling. I feel like he's gonna have to spend his whole fight camp just really working on that takedown defense, and I feel like it's not a matter of if Sean gets taken down, it's a matter of when Sean gets taken down and drilling. Okay, once we get taken down, or if that does not, it's not like if we get taken down, it's like he's gonna probably shoot 40 times for either a single, a double, a high crotch. You know what I mean? He's going to be trying it, and it's hard for me to believe that like if he does shoot for like 10, 15 takedowns, that like he doesn't get one against. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like he would be drilling like, okay, you get taken down. How do you get back up? You know what I mean? How do you scramble back to your feet? Because it's like striking's good, but I feel like that's the main thing he would have to practice for. But yeah, just the wrestling of Marab. I think the wrestling, the cardio, and the pace of Marab, I think will eventually melt O'Malley's offense.
Well, that's the kind of interesting thing, right? Is because in his last few fights and pretty much all his UFC career, we've yet to see somebody dictate the pace to Sean. It's usually him dictating the pace to other people.
Mhm.
He's the one who's picking his shots and playing outside, or if he's against somebody who can't offer him a threat back, he's foot on the gas, walking forward, putting out offense. So the question then becomes, and the interesting part of this fight is, what does it look like for Sean in his current championship form if somebody else can dictate the pace to him, can dictate where the fight is going to happen to him? And Rob, you would think, would be the guy who's able to do that. But I also felt similarly about Sterling. I thought Sterling was going to be able to do that to him, and he proved me wrong on that night, and he proved a lot of people wrong by just finishing him right there. So, is it a situation where we're going to be able to see those positions, or is Sean going to be able to pick his shot? Is he going to be able to find the button? Because Marab's going to present him opportunities by moving forward. That's definitely going to be his game plan, and we've yet to see him be in a big spot and not follow the game plan of moving forward, pressure, constantly trying to push somebody onto the back foot. And that's the recipe that you would try against Sean, but we've not been able to see anybody actually implement it yet. So it'll be interesting to see if he's the guy who can do that, or if maybe Sean's just in a moment right now where no one can do it to him.
And it's the more I think about it, what's a thing that I do see that it's a bit of a worry from Marab's side is that he does take a fair amount of damage going in. You know what I mean? Like going in for those shots, making those kind of creating those opportunities for takedowns that like Sean O'Malley has shown he has the power to like a person's lights out, put a fighter's lights out. Like he caught Aljo with that shot, just boom, in, out, he was trying to put Cheeto out, and Cheeto took a lot of heavy shots, took some shots I feel like would have knocked down or knocked out a lesser fighter. You know what I mean? Like any person who's not named Cheeto Vera, I feel like would have been looking at the ceiling lights. But just Cheeto Vera is just that tough. But so I do think that like Merab, if he takes as much damage as like I feel like Merab leaves himself open, susceptible to something like that, where I could see like that being like an opening for Sean O'Malley to kind of be like when he creates those opportunities, being like pop, pop, pop. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think the press conference will be fun. I think that the weigh-in show will be fun because I think it is one of those fights where you have two fighters with both really entertaining personalities. Like they both have a likable. They both have that charisma. Both have what I like to call like that championship charisma, that champion's charisma. Where when Sean O'Malley became champion, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like that fits. You know what I mean? Like he said he was going to do it. He made it happen. He said, hey, I'm going to become champion. Like you could just feel it when he was like talking in the press conference or talking in general. When you see him speaking, he's got that like champion's aura. You know what I mean? Like that conqueror's hockey. You know what I mean? He's got that like championship charisma for other words, where you just like, you could, if you saw him and you saw even before him becoming champion, if you were just a casual fan who just happened to see a promo that had Sean O'Malley in it, you'd probably be, if someone told you that was the champion of whatever division, you go, oh, I could see it. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't even have to know what's going on. You could just see that promo and be like, yeah, he's probably, someone told you he was a champion. You wouldn't go, that guy? You'd be like, oh yeah. And I feel like Marab's kind of got that same charisma, personality, because I think it now, especially after the thing that happened with the jacket, with the Thriller looking jacket, I mean, you got to see more of Marab's personality. He's very funny. He's very likable. He's also very extremely knowledgeable for the wrestling. I don't know if you've seen him when he was like doing the wrestling with Nina Drama and all of them. It's like, and all the other people, just like the wrestling in general they puts on in the pace. Like now he's in that. I don't know if you've seen the videos of him and Paulo Costa, them stealing each other's food at the PI and whatnot. For anyone that doesn't know, the PI is the Performance Institute where all the fighters train and whatnot. They get food, training, all that type of stuff. And so I think that's pretty funny, just being like, hey, I'm going to take your food, da da da. So I think, yeah, like I feel you see Rob fight. If you saw a highlight of Rob's, like his fight resume, someone put a little compilation or even you see some of the like the way he, when he took the jacket, you're like, oh, that guy's the champion, right? You'd be like, I'd see it. I could see that. Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. You know what I mean? Like, I think both these guys are people who, either way it goes, I think will be a benefit for like the fans.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think both of them are really good. Like Sean's a really good striker. Rob's a really good wrestler. And I think you have that classic like wrestler versus grappler kind of who's gonna come out on top type situation. But I would like to. I'm gonna say Rob wins that.
I'm gonna hold off until we get a little bit closer. 'Cause
Mhm.
it's you know how it is with the events. It's we get the announcement and then sometimes they get delayed. Sometimes you never get the fight at all. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna hold my cards on that to see till we get a little bit closer. But it's definitely the fight that needed to be made and looks like has been made. And moving
Hmm.
from a division with a straightforward picture of what's next for the title to a division that it's very unclear about who's next and when that's going to happen. Let's talk about middleweight. Your champion Dricus du Plessis is looking for a match, and it seems like nobody knows who the other side of the card's going to be because you have Izzy who's waiting out there and has been rumored and it seems like was offered possibly for you that didn't end up coming through. And then you have Sean who's actively campaigning for it on social media trying to make noise. And it's kind of two different approaches to trying to get a fight made. And it'll be interesting to see who ends up getting the nod from the UFC in the end.
Yeah, because I'm honestly happy either way because I would really like to see the the Duplessis versus Adesanya fight. That is literally what what's the right word for it? But it's literally what like one of those like big time pay-per-view um type fights are made of, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
already got the storyline built into it. They already kind of have this kind of beef between each other. You know what I mean? They already kind of have already there's already the like the tension of like that they already have. They're both the top fighters in the division. They already got the storyline going. It feels very WWE esque. You know what I mean? It's already got the you got promo for days for this. You know the build up will be crazy. The fighting style, the fights can be crazy because both of them are like strikers. They both have like two different styles, but they both have two different ways going on. I feel like Dricus has like such an awkward style that works for him, and like more power to him. And then like once he was able to breathe and got that thing fixed with his nose, he said, "Hey man, I'm finding on like 20% oxygen out here. That's why I'm out here looking uh like gassed pretty much every time in every fight after like the first round." And I was always wondered what was going on with that. I was just like, "Yo, man's died already." But he showed in the Whitaker fight once he could fully breathe and he had like both nostrils. He could fully get that oxygen in that like, oh, he showed, hey, I'm when I can fully breathe and get that full oxygen in my chest, like he came showed up and showed out. But then Izzy, the undefeated, undisputed middleweight king, like the guy who's been running the middleweight division, I feel like you can't talk about middleweight greatness or greatness in general without mentioning Israel Adesanya. He's got again championship charisma. He's got that like WrestleMania main event like protagonist of the anime type energy. You know what I mean? He's got the personality. He's got super likable, very charismatic, top tier kickboxing. You know what I mean? Like because I feel like if your name's not Alex Pereira, who's really beating also Sean Strickland, like definitely like put in the work, like and won. But I feel like outside of those guys, like you can't name a person who's beaten Izzy. outside of Sean Strickland and Pereira. Out of all of the middleweights, there's been only two dudes who've even like was like, okay, boom, boom, like Izzy's been like reigned as champ for such a long time. So I think that like the longtime champ against the new champ, I think this would be a really good fight for. Uh, I know they've been talking about doing a UFC Africa. I
Mhm.
think that would be a great first card for that, like to make that the main event. Um, if they do, but I've heard that I think UFC 305 is in Australia,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's also I feel like a great card to have that as the main event. I think Duplessis will have an issue with it because essentially that will be in Izzy's backyard. Uh, but I think it'll be a great fight. Do
Well,
I?
what do you think? Like as of right now, if you, well, I guess it's two separate questions. One,
Mhm,
if you were the UFC, what would you do? And then the other question is, what do you think's going to happen? Because, like you said, you have what feels like a more of a feud storyline, like kind of the John Jones DC type of thing,
mhm.
where these guys just can't get it right. They can't get together on it. It doesn't feel like bridges are going to be mended ever between these two guys.
No, probably not.
With Izzy and DP. So from there, do you go that, or do you go with the fight that was super close, that was really entertaining, that people love to see, between two guys who probably seem like once they're done fighting will at least be, on okay terms. Like
Mhm.
especially in the build up to the last fight week was very respectful for the most part. So you have this kind of sporting, like, mutual respect rivalry of guys who want the same thing. And then on the other hand, you have this feud and sort of an extra element of charge to it. But it feels like either one you could do again and be perfectly fine. So what would you do, and what do you think is going to happen?
I think that, like you said, the Strickland DDP fight was really entertaining, and I as a fan would enjoy seeing that again. It was very close. That I thought Strickland won, and I feel like a lot of people thought Strickland won.
Hmm.
That's not to take away from DDP and like him winning. He did win. That's what went down in the books. But I thought Strickland won, and but I was happy for him. I was like, hey, DDP won. But I think that seeing that fight again, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'd be like, hey, I'd be here for it. I think that if I was the UFC, while Sean Strickland is also a dude who is very has a very strong fan base behind him. He's one of the fan favorites. He's a very like UFC like he's like a UFC fan favorite. I think a lot of he's a very cool. He's also another like his style is also very kind of got that like Philly shell kind of like defense, but he's like Sean Strickland got like three moves and he maximizes those moves to the peak because he got that. He's coming with that one doing that little front kick, little teep kick, Um, but I think that I would do it probably like this, where from like probably like a business perspective and like a fan perspective, I think the more lucrative fight to make that is also fan friendly is to make the Izzy DDP fight.
Hmm.
And if that is true that they already have locked it down for locked down 305 for Australia. I don't see I think that would be a cool area because I know DDP is saying Drickus is saying that like also anyone listening Drickus and DDP same things. His name is Drickus Duplessis, so everyone calls him DDP. But I'm gonna just use both of them interchangeably. Side note. All right, side tangent over. But the I think DDP will have a very big problem with it being in Australia. But I think if they can, I don't know how the process, how far along are they in the process of doing a UFC Africa, if that is possible from now until I think Drake has said he's going to become trying to come back in like May or June. I don't know how plausible it is to make that card happen or get all the necessary things to happen there. If I'm the UFC, I'm gonna try to make UFC Africa happen, and I'm trying and have those two as the main event. If not, go to Australia. Um, I feel like the build is gonna be crazy. The fight's gonna be crazy, and if Izzy wins, set up the Sean Strickland rematch because I think that would be uh, a good next fight. Because I can't think of who else in middleweight would be more interesting to see after Dricus. But if Dricus wins, match him up with Izzy again because I feel that like again that's another fight fans want to see, and it was super close. Um, but I think what will happen, depending on when Izzy comes back, if Izzy comes back, if Izzy's back or he does come back, like if he says, oh, he can make a May, June kind of like timeline, I think they will end up choosing Izzy because he he was he is one of the biggest draws in the sport, and he was a long reigning champion. So I think you already had that like long reigning champion versus new champion, the whole like feud that's going on. You know what I mean? Like the whole feud. You got the everything, the back and forth. Both of them can like is if Izzy's gonna be on the card, it's gonna be like a big pay per view sell. You know what I mean? You're gonna get a lot of eyes on it. Um, so I think that if he can make a May June kind of like timeline, I think they will choose the Izzy versus DDP fight. But I think if they can't, then I think they'll go Strickland because if I'm not mistaken, Strickland said he wants the rematch, or he may potentially like consider. He dropped hints about like leaving and going to boxing and whatnot. I don't know how true those are, but I don't know if that's the right way of going about it. You know.
Yeah, well,
But
I
what about
mean,
you? What do you think?
I think as far as like talking about leaving the UFC to go do boxing or whatever, it's those UFC contracts are pretty hard to get out of from
Mhm.
everything that we've seen. So I think really what's going on with that is that's a little posturing and like again just trying to make some noise to try and campaign for the fight. It's to
And then
me the thought if you're the UFC is like okay, what works right now that we have to do right now to capitalize versus what's always there. So for me, the Izzy versus DDP fight always works. It doesn't matter if they're at the top and one of them has a belt or not. That fight will always work. The Strickland fights don't necessarily work unless the title is involved. So I think from that perspective, I would go let Strickland run it back and say that was a close fight. And also because whoever wins that fight draws into Izzy nicely. Except for like, maybe you could say with Sean, like, if Sean wins, would you really want to see that one again? Maybe Izzy has to go get one more against like uh, a Whitaker or a Costa or somebody like that before we're looking at him back in title contention, but that also might be kind of good for him because it's been a little bit of an extended layoff now, and it seemed in his last fight that he couldn't get into rhythm and he couldn't really find himself. So for him, I think it would probably also be better to go have a fight, get back used to it, get in the right mindset, have a good performance that you're happy with, and say, okay, that's behind me. I'm ready to go into the championship fights again. So I think from that perspective, I would do that if I was the UFC. And then the other part of it, why I think Sean will probably get the fight, is just because he's campaigning for it. And I think Izzy's kind of sitting back and not publicly making any declarations about it. And Sean feels like he's constantly like staying on it and going after it. And I think while I'm sure the UFC isn't thrilled about like threats to go do boxing or any of that stuff that are probably empty anyway, I think they do appreciate that Sean's going out and promoting the fight and trying to keep himself relevant and in front of everybody's mind to try and get what he wants. And so I think that's probably the way it'll go in the end.
That's fair. Yeah, because I'll say that's fair because the Strickland DDP fight doesn't really make sense, or doesn't make sense if the title's not involved.
Right.
Because unless the title's involved, I don't think Strickland fights DDP if the title is not involved. Because his main thing is the title. It doesn't matter who's holding the title for Strickland. It's just as long as he's fighting for the title. I don't think DDP cares all that much to fight Strickland again, unless it's for a belt. So I think he is also like, hey, as long as it's me fighting for a belt, or me like if he loses it, him fighting for a belt, or if he is the champion, who is the next person in line. But if Strickland is the belt holder or someone else, let's say if like Paulo Costa won the middleweight championship, I don't see neither of them caring too much about fighting each other.
Right.
To actually like make that happen. But I feel Izzy and gonna want to fight today, next Tuesday, 4 months from now. That one makes sense all day, every day. Yeah, it just.
Well, also it's a unique situation in that it's a non-title fight that you could probably put on in an arena and sell it out.
Oh, absolutely. Like, yeah, absolutely. You're selling that out, like regardless. Oh, side tangent, side the thing. Since we're talking about belts and championships, something that just crossed my mind. Did you happen to see about the whole Tom Aspinall thing about, he's been campaigning just like Strickland for forever and a day to fight John Jones or Stipe, and they've been like how like when you're a kid and you're at the and it's like Thanksgiving or you're at the family get together and they'd be like, hey, go be with the kids, you know what I mean? Like there's like the adults table and like the kids table,
right?
And they're just like, hey, you know what I mean? It's like when you're in that middle age, you're like 14, 15, you're like, I'm too old for the kids table. Let me be over here with the adults. They'd be like, hey, go be with the kids. I feel like that's low key what John Jones and Stipe is doing to Tom right now. I feel like it's not, but it feels that way because Tom's been asking for it for what seems like the moment he got the belt. Hey, really enjoy the opportunity to fight John. You know what I mean? Looked up to y'all. Love me. And I love to fight a legend, to prove myself. They'd be like, yeah, that's cool, but we're gonna fight each other. Be like, hey, Tom, he's like, hey, Steve, hey, you trying to make this happen? Hey, John, you trying to make this happen? But so it's been confirmed that like John Jones is fighting Stipe whenever he does come back,
Mhm.
and they told Tom they're cool with him defending the interim heavyweight belt if he wants in the meantime. And I was kind of like, okay. I mean, like, I'm not like, it feels very like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, go be at the kids' table, the kid, go stay at the kids' table. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not
I'm,
here for it for defending an interim belt. Like again, the John Jones and Stipe fight that still works even if there's no belt for me at
uh-huh.
least. So I understand why the UFC is not going to do it, but if Tom Aspinall is going to fight again and John Jones isn't going to be on the other side, like then Tom's the undisputed champion and John's not. Like it doesn't count as a loss, but you're not the heavyweight champion if Tom Aspinall gets up there again and defends the interim belt. He's the undisputed champion then, because you could have fought him. It's and he's up there fighting. So if you didn't answer the call, he gets it now. That's how it goes.
And I'm not mad at that. I think that if John wasn't still injured, I'd be like, for all intents and purposes, Tom Aspinall would be, I would agree, be like the heavyweight champion. But I feel like after that crazy like tearing of the pectoral type thing, of him tearing the pectoral muscle off the bone, and he's gonna be out for like a year or so. I feel like once they come back, the Stipe versus John fight, I feel like is very legendary kind of like fight, like the best heavyweight in UFC history, Stipe Miocic versus like the greatest combat sports athlete of all time, like John Jones going at each other. I feel like that's just legendary and pretty epic. I feel like you'd sell out of that card would sell out. You know what I mean? Them at the on the marquee, them on the on the poster. I feel like that's a fight that has a very. I feel like that's. I understand why the UFC is doing that one first because I feel rather than Tom getting I understand why they're like, hey Tom, you can defend the interim if you want because I feel like that fight, the legendary fight, has a very short window of it actually happening. It's a very short shelf life. That fight is like fresh baked bread. That thing got it will not last long. You know what I mean?
I mean, I get it,
It's
but it's
because they're
also
both.
like John became the heavyweight champion over a year ago now. It was
Mhm.
last March. So we're already at a year. I mean,
But he didn't get hurt like 4 months ago though.
I know, but at the same time, people have been stripped for less. Like, how quick were they to strip Francis to get the title back out there when Francis got
That
hurt?
that is true, but I feel like the thing that is different with John is the greatest combat sports athlete of all time. I feel like that gives you some kind of like pull, and then go the fight. It's not like John's fighting any dude. Like I feel like he's fighting the greatest UFC heavyweight. So I feel like the idea of that, like, because how often do we get super fights, like legitimate super fights? Um, like in the sport of like MMA, like remember there was the potential of like Anderson Silva versus GSP that just never really happened, and then it was like for the longest time it was like Izzy and like John Jones, but that just never really worked out. There's another one I'm forgetting, GSP and Habib. You know what I mean? Like those that just kind of didn't happen. There's one of them I'm forgetting that Connor was supposed to be in. It was like Connor and someone else. I just can't remember.
Well, I mean, if they want it to be like have a belt attached to it so bad, they
Uh-huh.
could just invent a one-off belt for it because
Eh,
it's like if especially if both of these guys are going to retire after the fight, like don't let either of these guys retire with the belt. Like they can have like the heavyweight legend belt or something you make up. Like let Tom, who's going to fight more, and is actually willing to risk it and like put put lineal heavyweight championship status out there. Let him have the real one, and these guys can be the like make some like you did with the BMF. Just make another one. Call it something
See,
else.
my only pushback on that is I'm not here for any more like random one-off belts. The BMF belt, I think it's a cool idea and I do like it. I do like the concept of the BMF because I feel that Justin Gaethje he's the definition of BMF. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And for anyone who doesn't know what BMF is, search it up. Google's. I don't think we can say it on YouTube. So the or at least one part of it, but like the baddest mofo, you know what I mean? I feel like that's still fairly YouTube safe.
Yeah, I think so.
But he's the most like BA kind of like athlete that there is, you know what I mean? Like in the UFC, because I feel like Justin Gaethje is your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. You know what I mean? Like he is the human highlight reel. Him and Max Holloway. I have no problem with them fighting for the BMF title back. You know when 300 UFC 300 comes around. Those two definitely define that, right? But I'm not. I would be slightly annoyed if like slightly annoyed in the sense of like, you know, when you get a paper cut, you're like, oh, this is an inconvenience. Like you're like, like, are you super mad about it? No, but like, is this mildly inconvenient to your day? Yeah, it's like you're dry. It's like you're in the car, you trying to eat tacos or whatever. You know what I mean? And you like spill sauce on you. You be like, or you get whatever, like you spill food on you. You know what I mean? You'll be like, this is inconvenient, but like it's not really mad. That's how I feel about like an extra belt. You know what I mean? If it be like, oh, we're making this one belt just for John Jones and Stipe's fight, and then we're just gonna do it with it. I just feel like it's unnecessary. But I do think that Tom Aspinall should get the chance to defend it. I think that what they do is have John Jones and Stipe fight, and let's say it is a Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler type fight, or like John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson fight. Like they're going at it, right? Or even if it's a quick fight, I don't care which way, but have Tom show up for that fight. I feel like Tom needs to be there for that fight. He has to show up for that fight, I feel like. And if he does, and both of y'all already agreed that y'all are retiring after this fight, if both y'all, because both of them in their 40s, kind of midway into their 40s, they both have gone in the back and had a gentleman's agreement, like, hey, this is the last fight. After the fight, win, draw, lose, whoever, even if it's a knockout slobber knocker or it's a quick finish, the winner of the fight should invite Tom into, they should invite Tom into the cage. And the winner, if they're both going to retire, regardless of what's going on, like let's say if John wins, John should take off the belt and just wrap it around like Tom Aspinall and, do the little hand raise up thing and just be like, hey, I'm retiring, but this is this is the heavyweight champ. You know what I mean? I think that's better. I would prefer that than like them making some like random one-off belt. Or if Stipe won, have Stipe go, hey, I'm retiring, but this is the future. You know what I mean? Like, how like they do in like it's just like, passing the torch on to the next generation. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like this situation didn't happen with Izzy and but I feel like a similar one was like the Izzy and Anderson fight. When Izzy fought Anderson Silva and they had that moment after the fight. And like, it was like Anderson Silva's like, type thing of him being like, this is the future. This is the next generation. When he kind of passed the torch to like Izzy, metaphorically, I feel like would be the right thing to do. If Stipe or John wins and they do plan on fighting more, okay, cool. Do the next fight and Tom can fight, whoever wins. But if they both plan on retiring, whoever the winner is should just go ahead and say, hey, be like, thank the fans. hey, appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for everything y'all done during my career, my UFC career, and then just wrap the belt around like Tom, or give the, or like do something of that nature. How like Masvidal, wrap the belt around so and so. I think I don't think he did, but like Dana comes by. He said he was gonna do that. Jorge Masvidal said he was gonna do that. Just Poirier would have won, but you know how like Dana comes and wraps the belt around the new champion. I feel like instead of Dana that time, it should be like what I mean, like Dana gives the belt to like John or Stipe, whoever wins, and then they go like, hey, it's the future, hey, blah blah blah. So it kind of like that transition from like the previous era to the new era. I think that's better than them being like, here's some random Legends belt that like has no history, that has no kind of like any meaning, that we've literally just created for this one-off event, that no one's gonna remember about this belt,
I
because then
disagree.
I just feel like it's a waste of money.
I think it would be more appropriate because Stipe hasn't fought in 3 years.
Yeah, he a whole firefighter, and I think he got a pizza shop too. This man got a whole
His
like
last
career.
fight was literally 2021 March. Like Diego Sanchez has a more recent fight than Stipe Miocic, and Diego Sanchez is not in the UFC and hasn't been for a while.
But Stipe got a whole. He got two whole careers.
Well,
He
okay,
a whole
but like,
firefighter.
who else are we
He out
letting
here
take
saving
3
lives
years
and
off?
baking pizzas.
I mean, 3 years off after a loss, and you get to come in for the undisputed belt. Like,
But I
it
feel
is
like you
the
got that
most
pull though.
disputed. Like, whoever wins that fight, if they put up the linear belt, like, you are the most disputed champion. Because Tom Aspinall's been asking to fight both of you, and then if you go like, no, I'm just gonna retire, then it's
But do
like,
you retire and wrap the belt around him? Feel like, hey,
yeah,
this
but
is
that
the
would
new
be like, if I
champion.
was Tom Aspinall, I would try and start like a fight in the ring. Be like, get off of me, bro! Like, I want to fight you for this. I don't need your charity. Like,
Because I just feel like that's an odder situation. You just wait there and you just go, hey, we're retiring, put the belt and the gloves in the center of the ring, and then they just kind of like, after the fact, after the cameras go off and go, here you go, Tom. Like the UFC just the upper management at like the UFC just kind of like maybe Hunter or like goes, hey, here's the belt,
yeah, but
in
here's the
some
thing:
like
if they
back
do it,
room. Do you feel like that's better than like having the like either the greatest combat sport of all time, athlete of all time, or the greatest heavyweight of all time, kind of like pass the torch to you on like live television? This puts your name in the headlines, shows you as like, oh, this is the
yes,
next face of the
because
heavyweight.
if you
Like,
take it, then like you're basically admitting permanently that you're second. Like, you can't challenge them ever for supremacy, even in terms of legacy, because you're just taking it like, oh, thank you so much, it's such an honor. Whereas
but
like
yo,
the
that
perception will
builds your
always be that, oh, you couldn't beat that guy. Like, if you guys fought, like, that's why he just gave it to you.
no, or it could have been just like they were also they're in their 40s. They're just like, yeah, I can't fight anymore. So
Okay, well then don't fight for the undisputed belt if you're not
no, I
willing to
mean
give
like
it up for it.
I feel like if you fight right, like because if it's like they already agreed that they're gonna, I feel like if they're gonna not fight anymore, yeah. But I feel like if they're gonna fight for, I mean if they're gonna continue fighting, yes, have that last fight. But if they say, hey, let's say the fight was more intense than they expected, and they say, hey, we're done, I feel like people will hypothesize in the future, like, oh man, who would have won? Like Tom Aspinall or John Jones, or Tom Aspinall and Stipe. I think people will do that regardless. You know what I mean? But I think that, yeah, I just feel like it builds Tom's name for the next fight. You know what I mean? It puts you on ESPN, puts you on all the the MMA outlets, puts you in the news. You know what I mean? Like it builds your stock, saying that like the previous like the greats of all time say like you're up next. Like I, rather than you just getting a random back room, like you in the back somewhere in like dim lighting, and then some you're not dim lighting, but like you're in the back of the stadium after the fight, and they're just like, "Hey, you're champ now. You're like official champ now since they retired." I feel like that. I feel like that just doesn't hit the same as like getting that in the ring. You know?
Nah, I don't like it. Also, for the record, John Jones is 36 years old. He is not in his 40s.
Oh, okay.
If I'm Tom Aspinall, I am screaming from the rooftops. John Jones ran scared of me into retirement. I don't care if anyone believes it. I will repeat that lie for the next 1,000 years until he comes out of retirement and fights me.
You're not getting away with this.
Literally
You
every
just
press conference, like regardless of if we move on and I'm the undisputed and I'm defending the title now, like my opening statement will always be like the same way Tony Ferguson was talking about Khabib for the last like 5 years. I'm on that champ stuff only. Like
that is
if
hilarious.
John Jones tunes into the press conference, he's gonna hear his name come out of my mouth.
Every time he can't watch UFC anymore because every time he watches UFC, you're gonna be like, John Jones,
If I'm
you
in
watching this?
the crowd just watching an event, I'm gonna have a John Jones ran scared T-shirt on that I show to the camera.
With the belt on your shoulder, you're just
Yeah.
like, it's just like that's gonna be like the running like shtick, the running gimmick now. Anytime you show up on camera, it's on your hat. You
Yeah.
got a hat of it. You either at the press
Did
conference
you
or
watch
like,
the NCAA's?
no. I didn't get
Okay.
the chance to.
So a few of the wrestlers had like headbands that said
Hmm
100% Jesus on the front.
hmm
I would get a John Jones ran scared headband and put that on at all
It's
times.
just 100% scared.
Yeah.
John Jones. John Jones is 100% scared. That is hilarious. I feel like, yeah, I think I would have been like, if I know I'm the greatest, the next, like I'm the this generation's best heavyweight in the world, and likely will become the new like pound for pound best fighter in the world, pound for pound best fighter, pound for pound best heavyweight fighter. You know what I mean? Across any generation, I have no problem with like. I feel like it, as you come, you're coming up your career. You made it into the UFC. You're like knocking people out. You know you're the best. The fans know you are the best. You know what I mean? And it is now further solidified that you are the best by winning the interim belt, and then like, and as you move up, right? Yes, the ideal situation is to fight John or Stipe, but if they retire and they're like, because they don't have to do it, but I feel like if the combat sports athlete of all time or the greatest heavyweight of all time comes up and be like on some like, hey, come into the ring, I'm thinking we're about to do a face off. Like, okay, we about to, get the face off going, get these posters going. You know what I mean? I feel like they shouldn't tell Tom ahead of time that they're going to do this because I feel like someone told me ahead of time that they was going to do this, I'd probably be like, you know what I mean? But if they would have been like, hey,
Well,
we're thinking we're about to do a face off, and then they go, hey, I'm retiring, blah blah blah. It's been a great career since 20 not two oh thousand like Jesus English since 2009. Da 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 da. I fought Machida. They're gonna do the little. They tell them, and they're gonna have that little promo video, right? Of John Jones going against all these people, right? Him beating Shogun, beating Machida, beating all these legends, all these like, all these like high tier superstar, like the champions of old, right? John Jones beating all these champions of old, like Machida, Shogun. Uh, I think he beat Rampage as well, and then like all these people, right? Like him beating the who's who list, like the best fighters of that time. And then they come back and he's like, "Hey, thanks for a great career. I know I've had my ups and downs, da 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 da, but this guy's next. Like he is the best. Like to get that that shout out, that kind of like hey." All the John Jones fans are gonna be like, "Oh man, John Jones saying is this guy's the next guy up. Like he is the next best. He is the best heavyweight. Like he is the next guy who's gonna take his place as the greatest of all time." I think that's a pretty epic. I would be fine with that, like that, because I'd be a little bit salty that he's going to retire if I was Tom. But to have that as like that little cosign from either the greatest heavyweight of all time or the greatest of all time in period, I think it works more if John Jones wins and does that because he is undeniably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, sports combat athlete of all time. To have him give you that cosign, I'd be like, okay, cool. Going into my next fight, if they say, if someone told me at the next press conference, now that they said, hey, blah 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 blah, you ain't nothing. They said I wasn't the best of time. I've been like, I'd be like, you shut your mouth. You shut your mouth right now. Be like, hey, you can't tell me nothing. If the greatest did the greatest come to you? No, he doesn't even know your name. That means you're not important. Your boy got the shout out.
I will say maybe that's just a difference of approach and like opinion on how to handle it. Cause it's if I was Tom Aspinall and they told me ahead of time that they're both retiring and it wasn't out there public knowledge, I would need someone to like take my phone away to stop me from tweeting out like they're both running scared from me. They're both going to retire. Like I would spoil that so fast if I didn't have like somebody. Like if
the UFC
I thought
already
the UFC would be okay with it and not like really be upset about it, I would spoil that so fast.
Like
I'd be right on my Ariel Helwani. Like this is the main event and they're going to retire and I heard these things and they're telling me right now.
That's crazy because what if the UFC has this whole ceremony already planned? Like they already got like John Jones and Stipe already agreed that they're gonna retire. They've already agreed they're gonna wrap the belt around just like this huge coronation type thing. They got confetti to like shoot off. They got the golden stuff falling from the ceiling. Once they wrap the belt around, they already got this whole thing planned, and then they tell you, hey. You hear from the grapevines that this is gonna happen. You're just like, they've run scared from you. They'd be like, the UFC is like, now we gotta throw all this away. We had this whole plan.
No, I'm sure like they'd probably be upset about it, which is why I probably shouldn't/wouldn't do it. But
all the budget that went into this. Go ahead.
Nah, I mean, I'd be upset about it personally because like if you're Tom Aspinall, both of those guys leaving at the exact same time robs you so hard of a legacy fight. Like the whole thing that John got that helped build his legacy in the early part is like the legends of yesteryear were up there in the division for him to fight. And like the two guys who have the most weight behind their name leaving the division at the exact same time, when you finally got up there to them and both of them are just like, oh yeah, nah, peace. Like, I'd be like, what? Why are you doing this? What? I got through my contemporaries. I'm going to you now. Like, you're the previous generation, like the best of the previous generation that I get to fight now. And like, this is my bid to be the best heavyweight ever. And you're literally robbing me.
I could see that. I feel like I could see why someone would be salty about that. Because one of the things that you had mentioned about the people of old. Oh, before I get to that, right? Before I get to that, because I'm curious on your opinion. Before we get to that, who do you think Tom should fight next?
If he's gonna fight before,
if it's not Stipe and John, who do you think he should fight next? Either whether it's as much as you don't like defending the interim belt, or if it's, let's say they do retire and they do a fight, like they choose, like this is for the the first defense, like of the actual like heavyweight belt. Who do you think Tom Aspinall's next opponent should be? Who do you think? Who would you like it to be, and who do you think it will be?
So, I would like it to be Curtis Blades because that's Aspinall's last loss and maybe his only one.
Yeah.
If he has more than that, I can't remember it. So it's I like the GSP kind of target of anybody you lose to, you desperately want that match back to prove that you can beat them and you would beat them just on like that night in particular something was happening and it didn't all come together, especially in this case where it was a really bad injury in the first round. Like, so for him, I think that would be a really good fight. I think coming off of his last victory, I think Curtis, for all of his perseverance, deserves something good to happen to him. And getting a title shot with the type of spirit that he's shown to keep coming forward and constant comeback after setback, like, I think that would be a really good message to send to everybody who's like sitting on the sideline trying to pick their shots and like pinpoint their way to the title. Like, no, we're going to reward the guy who just keeps getting active. Like, every setback that he has, he just keeps going, okay, well, get some more fights. Let's go. Like, right back on it. I think that'd be a good message to send. I think it'd be a good story. And I think there's enough in it for both guys. For Tom, you get to fight a guy who has a victory over you. And if you're Curtis, obviously the title's right there. And I think you could do a pretty good job of setting up both sides about why people would be invested in them winning.
Yeah, and then who you think that they will give it to?
If it's defending the interim, I think they might do Curtis.
Mhm.
But if it's for undisputed, I have a bad feeling that the UFC would be like, yeah, but come on, would you fight Cyril Gane? Like, would you though? Like, maybe,
Mhm.
maybe even in
Mhm.
Europe, possibly. Like, maybe
Mhm.
we have a card coming up in Europe, and maybe you would do that for us. Like,
Y- You know, I'm not mad about that because actually, that's actually because I personally would like to see Tom Aspinall fight Cyril,
mhm,
and I was thinking like one of the cards, like Madison Square Garden, the one in Las Vegas,
mhm,
uh, one of those, right?
right,
But a fight card, Cyril versus Aspinall versus Gane, Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane in Europe. I feel like that fight card would probably go crazy though. Like that,
yeah,
like the pay per view for that, like do it in the UK, like do it in the UK. Have the main event be Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane for the heavyweight belt. Then do the co-main Leon Edwards versus whomever,
well, and I
right?
think they've just
Like,
built. I think like a few months ago, they finally wrapped up like an arena in Birmingham, England, where I think that's where Leon trains and is from.
yeah, yeah, right, dude. Like, like Leon Edwards versus Shavkat Rachmanov. That's already an insane main event and co-main event that I think people would go crazy about.
Yeah.
Because having Leon Edwards, the true Rocky, just out here defying the odds, making dreams happen, making the impossible possible. Like throughout his journey, wasn't getting a shot. He said, "Just let me get a shot to be champion." I promise. He promised he would not let down. He became champion. Had the whole that whole moment, right? The super like feels moment. You had to drop the tear when you see him like finally break through, and then to take on the two best wrestlers in the UFC, and then eventually get two wins over the guy who is considered the greatest welterweight outside of GSP. Like, and then on top of that, beat like the other best wrestler, Kobe. Oh no, he hasn't beaten Kobe yet, right? No, he did beat Kobe. Yeah, he did
Hmm.
beat Kobe.
Yep.
He like totally just that was a one sided traffic. to
Mm.
beat him, and then you going against the boogeyman of the division, Shavkat Rachmanov, 19-0, 9 KOs, 8 submissions. The like, what is that saying? The unstoppable force, the unmovable force versus the unstoppable force, or something like that, right?
The unstoppable force and the immovable object.
Yes, that. I feel like that's what that match is. Is like Leon Edwards has shown, hey, now that I got this belt, I ain't losing it. And then Shavkat's just shown any person he gets into the cage with, he's going to finish. 100% finish rate. That means he has not finished someone. And then you have Cyril versus Tom at the top of that card. Who's another top UK guy? That could be like the third fight on that card. That would also
I don't
like.
know if he's healthy, but you still have Paddy Pimblett. You still have
I feel like
Molly
that's a.
McMahon.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would. I feel like you put them on that card, but I don't know if seeing a Paddy fight would be like going from like Tom and Cyril to like Leon and Shavkat, and then like the third fight being like Paddy. I feel like Paddy being like, I think Paddy
Oh,
fight is
I
always
got one.
interesting. But I feel
Arnold
like he'd
Allen.
be. Hey, I'm fine. I feel like seeing Arnold Allen as that third fight against whomever. I'm here for that. You know what I mean? I think that would be a great third fight. I think Patty and Molly should definitely be on the card, but like I feel like that's maybe towards like the beginning of the card. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like or somewhere in the middle. But yeah, because I think Arnold Allen, dude, that's hey UFC. Let us know if you want us to help make cards. We already halfway through like building this epic UK card. Hey, come on. We
Well,
got
the
y'all.
proximity's close enough to Europe that you could throw uh, some of the other European guys on there. Like maybe you're saving the France fighters for the
UFC
France.
France, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe
But
not
if
them, but I think there's a few. You have the Georgian contingency that you could throw on there, and
yeah,
I think there's a few other of the Nordic countries like Sweden, uh,
hmm
Norway, Denmark.
hey, yeah, I think that would be a really good card. I see. So I think I would like to see Cyril be the next person to fight Tom Aspinall, just because I feel like they are the two best heavyweights at heavyweight today,
Mhm.
and I think that would be a really good fight, and I think that could potentially be the next big heavyweight rivalry. It doesn't not in the sense of any bad blood or anything, but as far as like that next like legendary trilogy, you know,
Right, more
like
like a sporting rivalry rather than like a feud.
exactly. I think that could be because then you have the two most gifted heavyweight athletes today. Because going at it, I think that could be because I could easily see like maybe they do the first one in Paris, no, first one in the UK since Tom's champion. Let's say Cyril beats Tom in the UK, and then Cyril gets the belt. Do the second one in Paris. Let's say Tom beats Cyril in Paris. Then you do the trilogy at Madison Square Garden. Like that's or like the one in that's I feel like that's a crazy one right there, or the one in Las Vegas. But I think that would be really good. But what I think will happen is, even though I would like for that to happen, as far as like
Mhm.
seeing Cyril fight Tom for the belt, which would also make Cyril the first ever two-time interim heavyweight champion, breaking history, making history. I think that what I think will happen is I think that they'll give the belt to Curtis Blades. Not the belt. I think they'll give the fight to Curtis Blades. Um,
Do you think it's just because he's got the more recent win and they seem to be on good terms as far as working together?
yeah, and I think that he is when you look at the ranking and all that stuff, like Curtis Blades is a good fighter. You know what I mean? I think he's one of the I think one of the top heavyweight fighters. Um, and I think he has the most recent win, and Cyril is coming off of a loss. And so I think that when you kind of weigh it out like that, and then Tom already wants the Curtis Blades fight, so I think that that's the fight that they would probably go with, being like, okay, Curtis has he's already someone who's in that like what is he like in the top five, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, do I think he has what it takes to beat Tom? I think Curtis Blades has what it takes to make it a very like interesting fight and potentially win. I think Curtis Blades, Tom Aspinall, I do think that's one of those where it could be a 50-50 type thing where it's like Curtis Blades could very much win this fight and become heavyweight champion of the world, or Tom Aspinall beats Curtis Blades and like solidifies and then be like, hey, I think is like the second person to defend the interim heavyweight belt in the history of the sport. So I think that's like on paper as like a fan of the sport, I think that's a great fight. I'm here for that fight. I would watch that fight because if I'm not mistaken, Curtis Blades is a wrestler, and
Yes.
I pull for wrestling. If I be pulling for the wrestlers to like succeed and do well. Um, but I do think just from a money perspective, like what's gonna be a bigger draw, and like what is gonna sell more. I think the Cyril fight sells more. Like I'm here to watch either fight. I'm here to watch both fights. I think both fights would be great. I'm a fan of Cyril and I'm a fan of like Curtis, but I do think the Cyril fight sells more because I think Cyril's a bigger draw than Curtis. Just because Cyril's like personality, he's got that charisma, he's got that like championship charisma where like the media loves him.
Well, and he's been in more title
Obviously.
fights, so he's
Exactly.
had more media opportunities and like been in bigger spots before, where a more casual audience has had more exposure to him. So he's definitely got a wider appeal, also.
And he has a very exciting fight style. You know what I mean? If you've seen his other fights, I know that like because technically the dude's only been in MMA for like what 4 years, 3 years, and he has had three, and he's like skyrocketed. He's flattened pretty much every heavyweight he's gone against, and has had three title fights. And in the entire time he's been in 4 years, he only has two losses. I feel like sometimes people will see, oh, there's Booms again. It's always cool when I see it, but it always throws me off because I was like here and I was like, magic. But because if I'm not mistaken, because people give Cyril some like some of the like the newer fans or some of the more casual fans give Cyril a hard time, but Cyril is the, if not the next best heavyweight, or like in the top two, because he only has two losses, and his only two losses, even though they were back to back, his only two losses were to the greatest combat sports athlete of all time within, and he took on that in his like what seventh UFC fight ever, and then the other fight was to like the strongest heavyweight of all time in Francis. You know what I mean? Like other than that, he's flattened pretty much every heavyweight competition he's gone against. Like,
yeah, so it's his professional MMA debut was 2018, and his UFC debut was 2019.
which is insane. This dude started a little bit before the pandemic and has already in what 4 or 5 years? What is that? 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, so 6 for MMA and 5 for UFC.
In 11 fights, in 6 MMA fights, he got into the UFC, and then within 5 fights. That means is that 5 before
I was
the
talking
title
years.
shots? Huh?
So it was
Oh,
6 years from his MMA debut as a
okay,
professional
okay,
and
okay,
5 years since his UFC debut to now.
okay. So that means because he fought Francis for the belt
Well, the interim
two
was
years ago.
2021 versus Derek Lewis.
Okay,
That was when they stripped Francis for being injured.
and then that means he would have started in the UFC. He'd have been in the UFC like 3 years by that point.
2019. Yeah, like 2-3 years.
Crazy work, because he's got a very high level striking ability. He's like the James Bonds of the heavyweight, you know what I mean? But the Cyril is a way more a higher selling fight. He's got the charisma. He's got that like James Bond kind of charisma. He's got the striking, the top tier striking. He's got the Muhammad Ali level footwork. You know what I mean? So I think that just like Chris Blaze does have the wrestling and strike, but I just feel like on paper, Cyril's probably the more like easier to sell
Right.
to like casuals and hardcore fans. And then I think that for Curtis Blades, he's an easy sell for the hardcore fans. You know what I mean? Like we all know Curtis Blades is one of the best heavyweights, one of the top heavyweights in the UFC today. You know, like we all know that. But if you were to like present it to a casual and say like some of the casual fans who are either just getting into MMA or maybe watch a couple of fights, you know what I mean, or watch some fights, you know what I mean, or not just they watch fights but not super into it, they'll be like, okay, so it's Tom Aspinall against a dude, you know what I mean? Like they may have heard Curtis Blades before, they may not have, or they may know who he is, but they don't know the extent of how good he is. You know what I mean? And I think that like that one, as far as like the sellability of it, was be. I think that might be a little harder. I think his is definitely easier than what's going on with the other one, the one that's coming up. But that's for another time. But
Well,
because you were talking.
let's get into what the hardcores are interested in. It's let's wrap this one up with some of our picks for the upcoming fight night.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, let's do that.
All right. So first one up is the Loopy Godinez versus Virna Jandiroba.
You already know who I'm going for. You already know. I've been saying this since the beginning. Loopy Godinez, all the chips forward. She's the future champion of that division. She's the future champion of strawweight. The wrestling, top tier. The striking, top tier. The personality, the charisma. She's another person got that championship charisma. Like you cannot tell me she is not like future star material, future superstar material. Like because I think she even just broke a record not too long ago. Being like the first woman to get like 5 fights, like 5 wins, 5 fights, 5 wins in one calendar year or something like that, or 4 fights, 4 wins in one calendar year, or something crazy like that. But when you see her fight, like I was watching when she literally picked up the one, I forgot what the lady's name was, picked her up, full on power double, and then like what afterwards, it just was once they got that, she was just like bing, 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 like like she is gonna go all the way to the title, and I feel like this is just the next stop on to the way to getting to the championship. That's just my opinion. While Jandiroba is a good fighter, I don't think good enough to stop the Loopy train. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, Loopy Godinez.
Okay.
Second round, first round.
You calling a finish?
Huh?
Are you calling a finish?
Hmm. I'm gonna say so. I think if there's a finish, I think it's second round. But I think that I think Loopy has the stamina and the endurance, the conditioning to just really just manhandle her all 3 rounds and get the decision. But I would say so. I'll say second round.
Okay. I'm with you on the pick, but I got a different method.
Hmm.
I agree that she's the more talented fighter, she's the younger fighter, and I think that she's kind of coming into her moment. Like you said, it's 4 fights last year, 4 wins, completely insane. Like 100% with you on it, but I think Virna might be a little too tough to finish. I think she's done a good job of kind of avoiding the bad situations and staying safe enough to get to decision. So I'm with you, Loopy Godinez, but I'll say by decision.
That's fair. That's fair. So, hey, you made the right choice. That's all I gotta say. You know what I mean? That's all that matters. So the next one is Bruno Silva versus Chris Weidman. Me as a fan, I want to say Chris Weidman. The fan in me wants to say Chris Weidman because I really want to see good things happen for Chris Weidman and see him win and see him make another like a potential another run. You know what I mean? Like, so I would like to say Chris Weidman. I think the thing that kind of makes me kind of like kind of torn about is Bruno Silva. I mean, like even I think that he is no like I don't think he's like I feel like he's the guy who essentially fought Pereira to a decision. I feel like you got to be a kind of a special fighter to do that. You know what I mean? Where it's like Pereira's knocking everyone out. Never that run to the top. Pereira was like, yo, put a name in front of me, watch me knock them down like bowling pins. And this dude actually took him to a decision, and they were like cracking each other, you know. So I do think that like that kind of gives me some kind of like, but I'm gonna go with my gut and say Chris Weidman for the win. I think he turns back the clock and he shows that like even after the broken leg, he can still come out on top and show that like he's still a force to be reckoned with.
Okay. So
But I think if he
I'm
loses, he retires. Like,
well, here's the
sorry,
thing. I would have said that last time, but then he didn't. So I'm not going to predict a retirement for Chris Weidman until he's literally saying it, and even then, it's MMA. Like, never believe
yeah,
the first time you hear it.
right.
So
But I'm hoping he wins and continues on.
yeah. So same with you. Obviously, like I think everybody likes Chris Weidman. I've never heard anybody voice a reason why they wouldn't like him. So
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure everybody likes Chris Weidman. Everyone's rooting for him. That injury a few years ago was nasty, and it's clearly he feels like he's still got something kind of left to prove. Um, I don't know. It's if Bruno Silva was like in an average kind of moment right now, I'd probably go with him. But he's lost 4 of his last 5, and I mean, the competition's pretty tough that he's lost to. But I can't get behind a guy who's lost 4 of his last 5 against a former champion. Like Chris Weidman
Hmm.
still was that dude, and he only needs to put it together for like 10 out of 15 minutes in order to get the win. So I'll
Hmm.
go Chris Weidman by decision, very emotional, and maybe a retirement afterwards, going out with a win.
Hmm. The next is Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. Uh,
Do you want me to go first on this one?
yeah.
Okay, so I feel like this is a very interesting kind of where are you at fight with both of these guys because they're both guys
Hmm.
who've had kind of big moments
Hmm.
where they've shown promise and then followed it up with like the UFC obviously went, okay, you're ready for bigger competition. And then once they got that kind of step up in competition, they both were kind of like not ready for it. So this is going to be a very interesting kind of back and forth of guys who I think are going to go for it. Like I think it'll be a
Mhm.
fun and entertaining one. And this isn't an Apex card; it's one that's in front of a crowd. So I think there'll definitely be the energy in the building that's going to push them for it, and I think they'll come flying at each other. I guess then you're kind of looking at like, okay, well, who's gonna pick the shot that gets it done? And I mean, if you're going off of like who's got the nicer resume, it's definitely Luke. It's just I I don't know. It's after that
See,
highlight knockout, I want to go with Buckley and think like, oh, he showed something that he's going to be able to like do when he showed his explosiveness.
mhm.
But I don't know. It feels like it that might have just been a flash in the pan for Buckley, and he's not going to be able to repeat that sort of success ever again. Like maybe that's his one moment that he'll be remembered for. So I'll go with the body of work, and I'll say Luke. I'll say by KO. I think whoever wins this is going to go for it and land a nice punch.
You know what? I see because I've been torn about it as well because for the same reasons. I do think that like they both have had big moments and I do think that however this fight turns out, I think this fight will end by KO or TKO.
Mm.
So I do think that is whoever wins is gonna win by finish. But this is the thing. I think sometimes when you do have two really dynamic fighters, two like explosive fighters, you can either get a really exciting, entertaining fight, or you could go the opposite direction and get two dudes who are kind of like cautiously, kind of like going back and forth with each other, not trying to end up on someone else's highlight reel. Like
Mm.
they don't because they are so explosive and because they have so many moments or they've had big moments in the past, they don't want to become the highlight reel that's played every time this person shows up on screen. You know what I mean? Where
Mm.
you might get a standstill of a fight, like how what was that fight? I think it was Derek Lewis and Francis, where that fight on paper looked like that was going to be a firework show. Like that was going to be a firework, like a fight of fireworks. That was a mouthful, but oh, fight of fireworks because you have two explosive, super strong strikers who go for the KO, but I think both of them were so like cautiously kind of like gauging out the other fighter, testing out like kind of like testing the waters just to make sure they don't get knocked out. You know what I mean? Like they were aware of what their opponent is good at, and it was kind of like trying to move out the way and not get hit. And I think both of them kind of stalled out a bit, similar to like the Carla Esparza Rose, I think Rose fight. Both of them were aware of what the other one was good at, and they're just kind of like, you know, like
Mm.
like. So I think that this fight could either turn out into a really explosive, like a really entertaining fight, or it might be one of those like where they're trying to like feeling each other out, and but it's like no action. But would like to say I think it ends by TKO. And all that to say, I think Vicente Luque gets it done just because he does have. Yeah, I say Vicente Luque second round.
Okay, well that brings us
And
to the main event, man. It's Aaron Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot,
yeah,
and it's this is a pretty big one up at the top of women's flyweight to see who's going to be the the next kind of contender up at the top of the division. So how do you see it?
I think Manon Fiorot has a really good striking style. Like she has an. I feel like her striking is nice. You know what I mean? I do think that she has what it takes. to fight for the title next. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I also same for Erin Blanchfield. She's done very well, and I do think that I feel like she also does have what it takes to like be in that next title shot. So I feel like I'm kind of torn 50-50 on this because I think both of them are I'm a fan of both of their fights. I do like the way they fight and would say I'm a fan of both of them. Um but I would say I think Aaron Blanchfield edges this one out and gets the split decision victory.
Ooh, so you're saying it's going to be real close?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm of a slightly different opinion. I was not very impressed with Manon's last fight against Rose. I thought Rose didn't look that good, and I feel like Manon just didn't put an exclamation point on it. And
Mhm.
I think that Blanchfield in her last few performances has been much more impressive. And I like that. I think that she'll be able to get inside and grapple on Manon and get her down. And so I'm thinking third round submission for Aaron Blanchfield. And then immediately is the
Mm.
next one in line after Grasso and Shevchenko settle their dispute.
I think a Grasso Blanchfield or Grasso. I think a Grasso Blanchfield would be really fun to watch, or Grasso. Yeah, yeah, I feel like that would be really cool. I I think that Ultimate Fighter is going to be really interesting to watch. I think that's going to be a fun one. I think Alexa Grasso is going to win, but I've been saying Alexa Grasso is going to win pretty much every fight that she's been in since 2016. So. And it haven't
Pretty good
been,
strategy.
yeah, right? Like, I've been saying it since she was on, like, the early, she was, like, I think on prelims or something, you know what I mean? But, yeah, I think that would be a fun fight. I think that would be cool.
And once it's over, we'll come back and we'll break it down.
Right? And we'll see how it goes. Let's see if our picks, how right the picks were, see if we were right, wrong, or somewhere in the middle. The, the, so that is it for today. We have gotten through a lot of really cool topics, a lot of cool, I guess, had some conversation. Hope you've enjoyed the conversations. Hope you guys come back. Let us know what you think. Yeah. So until next time, if you enjoyed us, awesome, cool, great. We appreciate you. And we hope you guys come back. If you didn't, well, I appreciate you watching this long. And we're just two dudes chopping it up, giving our opinions on the sport that we enjoy. You guys have a great day. I should see you guys next time.
Peace.